Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and in this video we're going to be building an urban dictionary. So we're going to be using an API which is going to help us to generate words from the urban dictionary API, so that when we come and search for a word here like animal, then it's going to give us a bunch of definitions, and if we search for something else such as something, then it's also going to give us another definition, and basically just how a dictionary works. And that is what we're going to be building. And we're going to be using NextJs version 14, and we're going to be using the urban dictionary from RapidAPI. And so what you need to do is you need to go ahead into rapidapi.com and then sign up for an account, and then you can just go ahead and search for urban dictionary using this search filter right here. So the API is called urban dictionary. It is a free API, and an example of the GET request that we're going to be sending is this one right here, which we're just really going to copy. But before we get into that, what I want to do is we need to create our NextJs application. So I'm going to open up my terminal, and then I'm going to cd into my desktop. And then in my desktop, you can see that I have a bunch of things inside here, but I can go ahead and say npx create -next-app. And then I'm going to add the latest flag so that it uses the latest version of Next.js. And then I'm going to call this urban-dictionary. And then I'm going to let this run. Of course, we need to go ahead and select a few steps inside here for our settings that we're going to be using. So we don't want to use TypeScript. We want ESLint, we want Tailwind, we want the source directory, we want the app router, even though we're not going to use it. And then we want the default import alias, even though we're not going to use that either. So I'm going to let this run, and then once it finishes running, then we are going to continue. So now that that has finished running, what I'm going to do is cd into my created folder, so urban dictionary, and then I'm going to say code dot, which is going to open up an instance of Visual Studio Code into this folder. And once that opens up, you can see that we have our default application structure. So we have the public folder with our two images, and we have the source folder where our application is going to live. Now, once you have that, what I want to do is I want to open up my terminal using Ctrl and J, and then I'm going to say npm run dev, which is going to open up our application on localhost 3000. And you can just say Ctrl and click on this link so that we can open up our application in our web browser. And you can see that this is the default Next.js application that we have. Now I want to remove all of this to begin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside my source folder, and then inside my page.js, let me close this down. I'm going to remove everything inside here, and then I'm just going to leave the return. So in the return, I just want to return an h1 that says, okay, there you go. So an h1 that says hello world, and then save it. And then of course it's going to reset, but with just a few things, because now we don't want this to be black. So I'm going to go inside my globals.css, and then I'm going to remove everything after line number 4. So just remove it and then save. And when I do that, you can see that this is what we have on the screen. Now let me go ahead and do this. I'm going to go inside my layout.js because I want to change this title. So I'm going to say this. The title for this is going to say urban dictionary built in Next.js 14, and then just copy this for the description. So just copy and paste it here, and then we can save that, and it's going to change our title. And that is basically the only thing that we're going to be doing in the layout.js. So you can close it. And then in my page.js, what I want to do is I want to begin fetching some kind of data for our application right here. So I want to build out the structure to begin with. So what I'm going to do is, instead of just returning an h1, I'm going to return a div. And then inside this div, I'm going to return an h1 that says urban dictionary. And then the styles for the h1 are going to be as follows, because we're using Tailwind. So I'm just going to say class name of text neutral dash 950. So very, very dark. And then I'm going to say font bold, and then text dash 4XL for small screens, and then for large screens text dash 5XL. And then I'm going to give it a margin on the y-axis of about 12 to begin with. And then on large screens, I'm going to give it a margin on the y-axis of 16 so that it creates this space on the top and on the bottom before we create our form. And this is going to be on the left. I want it to be centered, so I'm going to say text dash center. And then what I'm going to do is inside this div, I'm going to give it a class name of padding on the X of 8, just so that on small screens, let me show you how it's going to look. If we view this on small screens, it has some kind of padding on the left and on the right. If I were to remove this, then it might extend. If the screen is small enough, then it extends all the way to the end right there. I don't want that to happen. I want to have a padding, always a padding on the left and right, so that there's just some kind of space, you know, so that this happens, right? Now, once we do that, then let's go ahead and create our form. And our form is going to be as follows. We're going to create a form here with no action. And then we're going to create an input with a type of text, and then a name of text and an ID of text. And then it's going to have a placeholder that says search for something. And then I'm going to set it to required just because I can. And then the class names for this form are going to be as follows. I want this to be a width of full with this slight border, and then this slight grayish background color, and then some padding on the Y as well as on the X axis. So I'm going to say this. I'm going to give it a class name of padding on the Y of 4, padding on the X of 8, give it a width of full, so width of 100%, give it a border dash 2 with a border dash neutral dash let me say about 400, and then give it a rounded of full to make it completely rounded on the edges. So let's see, and there we go. So we have that. Now we just need to give it a slight background color. So I'm going to say bg neutral dash 100, just to a very slight background color, and then change the text for this, the text color. So I'm going to say text neutral dash 700, and we're going to have that for the text, but I also want to change the placeholder, and let me make this 800 just to be a bit darker. So I'm going to say placeholder dash text, placeholder neutral dash 700. So the placeholder, I want the placeholder to be just a bit lighter, and then the text is going to be a bit darker, even though it's not really visible. I mean, it's not visible that much. Now, once we have that, then let me check something. Oh, it says search for a word, not search for something. So search for a word. Okay. And then I want to limit all this because, as you can see, it doesn't go all the way to the end, and I think it's just a bit easier to read. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this form, cut it out, and then place it inside a section. So, and then inside this section, I'm going to give it a class name, and I'm going to say give it a max width of about 4XL and an MX of auto so that it centers it. There we go. So that is what we're going to use for our form, and then make this text just a bit bigger. So I'm going to say that for large screens, then the text is going to be XL to make it a bit bigger. And then what I want to do is I want to create this hover effect, or rather focus effect, so that when I click on this, then it creates this outline, right? So what I'm going to do is the following. I'm going to say that on focus, because that is the state that we want. On focus, I want the border color to change. So border neutral dash 700. Let me see. Yeah, 700 is okay. And then on focus, I want the ring, so the outline ring to be 4, a width of 4. And then focus, once again, I'm going to say ring dash neutral dash 700. So that now we're going to have that. Okay. Now the reason why we have this is because this has a default outline, which I don't want. I forgot to remove it. So I'm going to say outline dash none. And that is going to remove the outline. So would you look at that? And then you can add a transition if you want, just a slight transition if you want, but it's not really necessary all that much. As you can see, now our input is working correctly. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to go ahead and create the function to fetch the words to get the get request when we type in something inside here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back inside my Urban Dictionary API, and then here I've selected the JavaScript fetch because that's the one that we're going to be using. So you can just scroll into JavaScript fetch, or you can use Axios if you want. You just have to click on this and then just copy this part. but I want to use fetch. So where's the fetch? JavaScript and then fetch. And you can see that when you register for RapidAPI, you are given an API key. So this is the most important part of this. So let's just say copy code. And then what I'm going to do is the following. I'm going to go ahead and I want to use state. I want to use hooks for this. So I'm going to say import use state and use effect from React. And when you're using this, because NextJs is rendered on the server by default, so in order to be able to use state and use effect in NextJs, then you need to add an imperative here called use client to tell NextJs that you want all this to happen on the client side. Now once you have that, then I'm going to create our state values. So I'm going to say const words and set words. Set words is equal to use state, and by default I want it to be an empty array. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my use effect, and then for the use effect I'm going to say I'm going to pass in my empty dependency array, and then I'm going to say I'm going to paste this in. I'm going to paste it in, so that now inside our use effect we have our function. And not this needs to be a function so that this stops giving us errors. So let me cut this out. Let me just say undo. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to create a function called get definition. And then inside this function, I'm going to transform it into an asynchronous function because we want to use await, the await keyword here. So if I remove this async function here, the async keyword, then you see we get an error. So I'm going to add it in so that you don't get that error. And then I'm going to go ahead and save this. And you can see that the default term that we are searching for is what, okay, WAT. So I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to check something. Let's check what we have, if we are rendering something at all, because we are console logging the result. So let's go ahead and inspect because we are on the client. So let's go into our console and image. We don't need the image. Let's move this. And we're not getting anything. We're not, oh, you know what? We're not calling this function. We're not. So let's just go below this. Let's go below that and then say get definition. Then call that function. And then now we should be able to get something, but we're not getting anything. Let's see. Let me try something. Let me say console log something. Just want to see whether it's going to run on the console. Nothing is happening. Is it running inside here? No, because we're not on the server, we're on the client. And what if I grab this from here and place it here? Something. Okay, so this is not running. Let's see. Get definition URL is going to this. We are sending a get request with our API key with the rapid host. Okay, so response is await fetch URL result is able. This should be JSON. This should be text.json. Oh my god. Okay, now let's reload, and still nothing happens. Well, okay, there we go. So we get a list, and it has an array. It is an array of 10 items. So we know that that is working. Now what I want to do is I want to move this console log, and then what we're going to do is you can see that we get a list. So the list is the array that we actually want to get into, right? Oh, there's another console log here. So what I'm going to do is the following. I'm just going to leave the console log there for a moment, and then I'm going to say I want to populate my state value, which is an empty array to begin with. So I'm going to use this function here, and I'm going to say set words into result dot list. Now dot list because we are getting back an object by default. Let me see if I can show it here, the results. So we're getting back an object, right? The object is the first key, the one key really, and then we get back a list inside that object of 10 items. So we want to go inside the object to get the list array. So that's why we are saying here that we're going into result.list, because if I even to console log result.list, what you would notice now is instead of getting an object here, we would now get an array once this reloads. Just notice that this is an object, right? This is an object, but when I reload it, then we get back an array. There we go. Now this is an array. Okay, so that's just some things to note. And then now we're going to do the following. We're going to go inside the first item inside here, just so that we can see the data that we get back. And what we're going to do is the following. I want to go ahead and let's see. We are now populating this state value, right? So we can go ahead and begin to build this out. So below our form, I'm going to create a div, and then inside this div, I'm going to say the following. I'm going to say that only when words is true, meaning only when it is populated and it is no longer an empty array, then I want to say words.map, and then I want to map, and I want to say that for every word that I get back, then we're going to be returning an article, and this article is going to have a key of word dot, where is it, definition ID, so def ID. And then below this, we're going to have the following. Let me just remember the structure. So we have the word, and then the definition, and then something is something. What's this? This is the example. Then the example, then the thumbs up, the thumbs down, and then the author and the date. So let's see. So we have the word. So the word is this one. So we're going to say, let's return an h2 that says word.word. It doesn't make sense, but it works. Word.word. And then below this, we're going to have a paragraph that says the definition. So the definition, the way I structured it is, this is italic. It is emphasized because that is the correct element to use. So this part is italic, and then the definition is given. So I'm going to say that we want to render an em tag for emphasize, and then want to say definition. And then after this, we want to give the word.definition. And then below this, we're going to have what? We're going to have the example. Now for the example, I want to show you, where's the example? Here. For the example, I want to show you something. We're going to render the word.example, but you're going to see that this is going to be an issue, and then I'm going to show you how you're going to fix it. And then after the word.example, we want to render the thumbs up, which is here, and then thumbs down. So I'm going to use a UL with two list items, so li times 2, and then this is going to say word.thumbs up, and then this is going to say word.thumbs down. And you'll notice that these are icons inside here. So we're going to import, we're going to install a package called React Icons in a moment, but let's just have that for the structure. And then below this UL, we're going to have another paragraph that says by, and then word.author, and then on, and then we get the word dot, what is it, written underscore on. Now I'm going to go ahead and save this and watch how our application looks. Quite ugly, and we don't have the icons, and then the date is wrongly formatted. Just look at this date, it looks ugly. Now I think we are done with this part. You know what, we are missing the permalink, so let's go ahead and add the permalink here. So we're going to add a href or an href, and then we're going to say word.permalink for the href, and I want it to open on a new page. So I'm going to say the target is equal to underscore blank, and then the rel is going to be equal to no referrer, and then this is just going to say read more, and then save it, and we're going to have our read more button right there. So we can close this part, and then we can begin to style it out. Now I'm going to install a package called React Icons for our icons, and then for this date, we're going to install datefns. So let's go ahead and say Ctrl-J to open up our terminal, and then click the plus icon here to open up another terminal, and then I'm going to say npm install react-icons, and then I want to install another one called date-fns. So I'm going to let this run, and then we can begin to style out our application. So for the h2, we're going to give this a class name, and I'm going to say give it a class name of font-bold, and text-3xl, and then for large screens text-4xl, and then give it a margin bottom of 8. And then for this part right here, for the emphasis, I'm going to give it a class name, and I'm going to say font-bold. And then for a paragraph, I'm going to say give it a class name of text neutral-700. And my fan is now spinning quite fast. I hope nothing is breaking. I think it's because of this. Okay, so I waited for this to finish so that my computer's fan goes back to normal. Now what I'm going to do is right here, I'm going to give it a margin on the bottom of 4 to push it away just a bit from the example that we have here. And notice how the example looks. Okay, I'm just going to leave it like that for a moment. And then inside the paragraph example, probably just paste this out so that it doesn't look so crowded. Just paste them out. Yeah, I think that is easier. So inside the example, I'm going to give this a class name, once again, of margin bottom of 4 to push away from our thumbs up. And then inside our UL, I'm going to give this a class name, and I'm going to give this a class name of flex so that they're displayed side by side. And then give it a gap of about 4 just to separate them out a bit. And then inside here, we're going to render our icons here. And our icons, they are going to be from React icons. I can't remember the name, so let me search for them. React icons. And then React icons, I want the thumbs up. The thumbs up. You know, let me just search for like. There we go. So I use these two icons. So dislike and like. So I'm going to import both of them. So let me just import them on top. So I'm going to say import this one. And then when you click on them, it automatically copies to clipboard. So that's what happens. And this is coming from React icons /AI. And then inside our list items here, I want to render my first AI field. What was it? Like. And then inside this one, I want to render AI field dislike. There we go. And notice that they are React components, so you have to render them like React components. Okay. So I'm going to save this, and notice that we're going to have this on the screen. Once this reloads, there we go. So we have our like button, our dislike button, but they're kind of block elements, right? So we just want to use flex on our list item. So I'm going to say give this a class name of flex, that now this goes here. There we go. And then items-center, so that this comes down just a bit so that it is now centered properly. And then give it a gap of 1 just to separate it out a bit from this. And then the text for this one is going to be emerald because it is the like button. So emerald-400. And then I'm just going to copy these class names, copy, and then paste them here. And then this is going to change into rows because it is the dislike button. And we have that. Would you look at that? And then here, let me give it a margin bottom of 4 to push away from our next paragraph here, which is our author. And then for our author, we're going to do the following. Not really much is going to change, except that we want this to be formatted correctly. So we're going to be using datefns, which I've just installed, and we're going to be using a function in datefns called format. So we're going to import it. So import format from date-fns. And then the way you use it is you just go where we have our date. So we're going to say the following. We're going to say we want to format, and then pass in our brackets, and want to format new date, and then pass in the word dot written underscore on, and then want to format it in the format PPPP, which is going to give us the date as well as the day of the week that it was. So let me go ahead and save that, see whether it works correctly. Loading. Okay, so there we go. So it was formatted by this guy on Thursday, September 4th, 2008. So that's looking okay. Now we need to go ahead and style our read more button. Is there a way they did this? Or this is italic as well. You can do that as well just by grabbing this, setting it into emphasize, and do that. Now inside this paragraph, let me also give it a class name of margin bottom of 4, just to push it away from our button here. And then for the button, the class name is going to be text blue-600, and then give it an underline to show that it is a link. And we're going to have that. That looks nice. Now, I do realize that I've been using margin bottom of 4, margin bottom of 4, and I do know that you can use flexbox, but I just don't want to do it, okay? So don't flame me in the comments. Now, I want to separate out these sections because each of these articles really, I want to separate them out just a bit. So I'm going to go inside my div parent here, and I'm going to say that give it a class name of grade and grade columns 1 with a gap of 8 to separate out all of this. And I think that is too small. Let me just say gap 16. Oops, gap dash 16. Is that too big? Yeah, let's just use gap 16. I mean, you know, add space. And then let's also add a margin on the top to push away from this form. So margin top 16, you know, play around with the space. And you can see that that is our dictionary, but it has a problem because now when we search for something, then nothing really happens except that, you know, it reloads the entire page and then it still shows the original results that we had. So what we need to do is we need to create a function for that. And then we also need to go ahead and make that fetch, make our get request dynamic. So what we're going to do is we're going to first create another state value here called word and set word. This is going to be called the use state, and by default it's just going to be an empty string because this is what is going to change our input into a controlled input. So inside our input, I'm going to say give it a value of word, and then on change we're going to say we want to target the synthetic event of e, and then we're going to say set word into e dot target dot value, and this is going to help us to get the exact thing that we type inside our input. So when I save this, nothing really is going to change because we can still type inside here and, you know, we're just going to get the same result as before. So what we need to do is we need to add an on click or rather on submit event handler on our form. So on submit, and we need to set this equal to a function that we don't have yet, but we're going to create, and I'm going to call this function handle submit. Now the handle submit function, I'm going to create it below this, and I'm going to say function handle submit, and then I want to get the e event as well, so that I can say e.prevent default, meaning prevent the default behavior of the form reloading the entire page when I submit it. And when I save this and I try to type in something, then to notice that now the form does not reload the page. Now that is what we want to have to happen by default. The second thing that we need to do is we need to call this function, the function called get definition. We need to call it every single time that the form is submitted. Now you would think that just adding get definition inside here is going to work, but it doesn't. And the reason for that is if I search for animal, the reason why it doesn't happen, you get an error. It says get definition is not defined. Now it is defined, but it is inside the use effect hook, so we don't really have access to it. So what we need to do is just grab this and just place it above the use effect, so that now it is accessible to the entire application instead of just inside the use effect hook. So I can save that, and now look at this. I can search for animal, but nothing still happens, right? Let's reload that so that I don't get that error. So I can search for something, but get definition is not oh, it's get definition, not get definiton, get definition. There we go. Now I can go ahead and search for something inside here. Now the search is going through, and I hope I didn't remove the console log. Let's check. You can see that every time that I search for something, then it gives another console log. That means that the search is going through. Okay, the search is going through, but it is only searching for what? Because if you take a look at our get request, the only thing that we're searching for is what? So we need to transform this into a dynamic kind of get request. And the way you do that is I like using template literals, but what you can do is you can just remove this and then place a comma. Sorry, not a comma really, but say plus and then the word, meaning at the end of this get request inside here, append the word state value, which we know is an empty string. Now if I save this, look at what is going to happen. Once this reloads, we should get nothing on the screen. because we are not searching for anything yet. But if I search for something, then it is appended to the end of the string, right? Because word is appended right here where our search term is, and then now it searches for something, and then because we are displaying it using React, or rather Next.js, then it looks quite nice, and that is what we get. Now, I don't like using this. I don't like using this method because it sometimes confuses me. So I like using template literals instead, which are backticks, because now I can just add it inside here using $sign and then curly brackets, and then just say word, and then we have that. So that now I can search for something else, and if it doesn't exist, obviously nothing is rendered on the screen. But I can search for what, and that is what we get back. So that is the Urban Dictionary built in Next.js version 14 using the Urban Dictionary API from RapidAPI. And so that is going to be the end of the video. Now what I want to do is I want to commit this to GitHub, but I want to change this up because I don't want to commit this to my GitHub repository. So I'm just going to change this into your _API_key so that you can substitute this part with your actual API key. So I'm going to save this and our application is going to break, but that's okay. Now what I want to do is I want to open up my GitHub repository. So GitHub, and then I can commit all of this into GitHub. So Ctrl+J and close my terminal. And then let's commit all this. So let's create a new repository. So create a new repository and call this Urban Dictionary. Should I say maybe Next.js? Let me just call it that. So Next.js Urban Dictionary, and then create repository. And then let me copy this link, and then let me say git add package, and then git commit, and I'm going to say -m, small m, install react icons and date-fns. And then inside my source folder, I'm going to say cd source and git add, let me just say layout.js. Wait a minute, what? Or cd into the app folder. So git add layout.js and git commit. And I'm going to say update document title and description, and then git add page.js, git commit. I'm going to say app complete, and then git add global.css and git commit -m. I'm going to say style application, and then git remote add origin, and then paste in that link, and then git branch -m, now capital M, main to move it to the main branch, then git push -u origin main, and there we go. So this is going to push into my remote repository, so that way when I reload this, then I'm going to be able to see our application right there. So that's looking nice. But that is going to be the end of the video, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked it. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.